Welcome everybody to the Play-by-Play Football Talk podcast. As always, we are back Saturday. We are here a little bit earlier today than normal, but as always, I am Brendan. Joined with me today is Sterling. How you doing today, man?
All good today. Hopefully anybody who's joining us understands why we're early. We got a full slate of preseason games today. So, a quadruple header, if you will. They start at 11 and it's going to roll right through. So, we want to get stuff done and out of the way before we go and watch some football.
Yeah, there's a lot of good football stuff on today. Obviously, it is the first preseason game for both of our teams. We saw the Lions and the Falcons yesterday. We saw the Jets a couple days ago. Just taking a look here at the games that have actually happened.
There,
But
there've been a lot the last couple of days. I know I watched bits and pieces of both the Bengals and the Browns playing yesterday.
So we've seen on Thursday, we saw the Giants versus the Patriots, where the Giants actually topped the Patriots. Obviously, looking at this game, we're not really seeing a whole lot of starters. So Tyrod Taylor was actually the leading passer for the Giants, but Bailey Zappi was the leading passer for the Patriots. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Mac Jones didn't see the field at all,
yeah,
actually, in that game. And
yeah.
so
So obviously, not a whole lot to really talk about with that. Then we
No,
see
but
the
the Giants looked all right in the first quarter there. When Daniel Jones was in the game, they had Jones, they had Barkley because they do for the first time have everybody healthy, hopefully right up till the start of the season.
yep.
So they didn't look that bad actually. I've seen a lot of people talking about this might be the Giants might break out this season like the Bengals did last season. Like I don't think it'll be that good, but it is possible. Who knows? They could come out of nowhere and take that NFC East since
Yeah.
it's such a shoddy division most years anyway.
Yeah, just unfortunately, the last two nights I just haven't been able to watch any of the games just due to me being at work. But
Yeah,
one of those things where it's good to have football back. Obviously, a week ago we had the Hall of Fame game, which is the Hall of Fame game. That's even technically it's a preseason game, but how much of a preseason game is that really? Like,
yeah.
we didn't even see Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, like none of the big name guys played in that. But yeah, Thursday this week, Giants Patriots obviously, and then we had the Titans lose to the Ravens actually 23-10. So apparently, you know, Malik Willis looked okay. Didn't get any touchdowns, didn't throw any interceptions, but was 6 for 11, was fairly decent. Tyler Huntley still played a fairly decent game. What we've seen from him as a starter last year. You know, he's a very capable backup for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I take that with a grain of salt. Malik Willis did look good that game. They're obviously not going to be trying everything out with him yet, and I always take the Ravens in the preseason with a grain of salt. Like they haven't lost a preseason game since something like 2016 or 2017. Like
Yeah,
they go undefeated every year in the preseason, and then make the playoffs maybe 25% of the time.
which is just insane to think about. Just
I
looking
mean,
at what they're doing.
it means they've got a lot of depth, but they don't got a lot of star power.
True.
It's like, yeah, you can win in the preseason when everybody's playing their backups and you're playing your backups because your backups are better than everybody else's backups, but your starters are not better.
Yeah, fair enough. But you know, Baltimore went out there. They won the game. They were able to do it, and so again, they continue that streak for however long it is. But last night we actually got a bunch of games. We got the Falcons versus the Lions, the Browns versus the Jags, the Jets versus the Eagles, the Cardinals versus the Bengals, and the Packers versus the 49ers. So you were telling me a little bit earlier that you were able to watch some of the more NFC or AFC North player or teams that were playing. Obviously the Browns and Jags.
Yeah, bits and pieces here and there, but I didn't really see a whole lot of anything special. Joe, I didn't see Burrow playing at all.
Yep,
I didn't even notice who was playing quarterback for the Browns. I was more checking to see if they were going to have Trevor Lawrence playing, and
which
I
they
didn't
did.
even that maybe early on, but I didn't get there until later in the game, and There
Mm.
was no Trevor Lawrence on the field by that point.
Yeah, so Trevor Lawrence was 6 for 12 for 95 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions for a passer rating of 104.5.
No,
So, not a bad, opener for him. Deshaun or Joshua Dobbs, his counterpart for the Jags or for the Browns, excuse me, was 10 for 13, 108 yards, one touchdown, zero interceptions for a passer rating of 126.4. So he had himself a decent game. Looking at the if I can find the actual stats for this
yeah.
game, I don't know if Deshaun Watson actually played or
Looks like he
not.
was 1 for 5 for 7 yards. So
So
in
very
there for
effective.
one drive, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Though
yeah,
I
so
mean, outside of
preseason.
Joshua Dobbs, it looks like Josh Rosen actually was pretty good as well. 6 for 7 for 56 yards. I think it's more likely we see Rosen as the start. Or no, because they bring in Jacoby
Yeah,
Brissett,
yeah, they did.
you
And
know,
unless
so
I'm seeing this completely wrong and taking a look here at the roster,
right.
uh,
Strange that he wasn't in there at all. Maybe they're trying to figure out who their number 3 is.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, Jacoby Brissett is on the roster, so they
yeah,
do have that four-man squad, and realistically, we know they're only going to keep three guys,
yeah. And I
if
mean,
that.
Joshua Dobbs, I know is capable and serviceable because he has been in Pittsburgh the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. You did get to see a fair whack of him, but again, that's going to be a really weird situation for the Browns to be in because obviously a verdict still hasn't really been passed about what's happening with Deshaun Watson, and so we're still
One,
kind of sitting here wondering like, is he going to be suspended just for the 6 games? Is he going to be suspended long term? We just simply don't know at this current moment.
well, and I feel the longer it goes on with the appeal, like if he ends up getting to play any games, that's just going to make Roger Goodell angry and make him seek that full year even more.
Oh yeah, which
He's going to look at it and go like, we wanted you suspended at the start of this season, and because of everything getting dicked around, now you're here playing. Now I do want you gone for the rest of this season to make a point, to make an example.
yeah, yeah, and that is not what we want for the sport. Obviously,
Mhm.
if a decision could be made today, that would be awesome. But
Right?
unfortunately, we don't live in that world, so we can't continue to look onto it. But yeah, going back to the rest of the games this or yesterday, we saw the Falcons beat the Detroit Lions 27-23. So, a fairly close game, but these are two teams that we're kind of expecting to be closer to the bottom this year with
Yeah,
what
of their
they're
respective divisions for sure.
well, just in the respective of the league itself.
Yeah,
So, both of these teams, well, I think personally, the Falcons, I think we're going to see probably be fighting for that number one spot in the draft this year. The
yeah,
Lions are probably going to be somewhere in that 5 range. So, yeah, Aiden Hutchinson looked fairly decent in the time that he got yesterday, which is something that you like to see. But Desmond Ritter, fifth round pick or was he a fifth round pick or was he a third round pick? I think he was a third round pick for the Falcons. Went out there 10 for 22, 103 yards, two touchdowns, zero interceptions. Looked good. Looked good. This is a guy that, what, if he sits behind, Marcus Mariota for a year or so, maybe just maybe the Falcons found their guy.
yeah.
But
Which I completely agree with. I mean, if you remember going back to the draft when I didn't think Kenny Pickett would drop to 20, I had jumped on that Desmond Ritter bandwagon and said, well, if we don't get Pickett, I want Ritter because you sit him for a year behind a capable, veteran who, may not win a Super Bowl for you, but is a good leader and good setter of an example,
yep.
then he could be a big guy once he does hit the field.
Oh, without a doubt. And as you remember, Ritter was actually my number two ranked quarterback going for this year's draft. So I'm not really surprised to see him do well. But again, the team around him just isn't good, and we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, he did go to Atlanta, so that might be a situation of if they have a really, really bad year, they might just look at a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud and go, you know what, we're going to pluck you right away. And then Desmond Ritter is kind of, brought back to the world of just a backup, you know.
That is true, but I mean, Atlanta does have enough weapons that they could find themselves winning enough games that they're sitting more fifth or sixth overall pick
Potentially,
than
potentially.
first overall, and so that like that then you know that's a tough one because they
Yeah.
do have some good offensive weapons still.
Oh yeah, Kylie Pitts is
Hmm.
an insane tight end.
And
You
I
know,
believe they drafted one of the big wide receivers this draft
yep,
as well.
that they did. They drafted. Why am I instantly forgetting his name off the top of my head? Just taking a look at it, Drake London.
Yes, that's the
Yep.
one.
Obviously my number one rated wide receiver coming into this year's draft, and the dude looks really, really good. Obviously, I didn't get to see him play, and it sounds like there was potentially some knee issues within this game. Drake London knee injury is not serious, which is good. Exited the team's preseason game against the Lions. So, unfortunately, did get a little bit banged up, but we'll see how long he is out for, and hopefully, it is not too terribly long.
Yeah.
But yeah, going throughout the rest of the Friday preseason games here, we see the Jets versus the Eagles, and big news coming out of that game is that Zach Wilson, young quarterback, second year quarterback for the New York Jets, got left the game with an apparent knee injury. But looking at Twitter this morning and following up with that, he will need to go under arthroscopic knee surgery, and he will be sidelined for about 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So the Jets are going to be without their quarterback for the opening part of the season, but eh,
They have a serviceable veteran to take that place, though, because they do have Joe Flacco on the roster. So presumably Joe Flacco will be starting the season for the Jets now.
presumably, yeah. And but that is a very, very tough pill to swallow if you are the New York Jets. And it
And
kind of makes you almost fearful. Like we see this every single year with teams where a quarterback goes down in a preseason game, and you're just like, really, like, what? Like, this is horrible to watch happen.
well, and I mean, we were talking about it. There's I'm sure the 49ers were hoping for a longer injury because that could have created a trade opportunity for them for Jimmy Garoppolo finally.
Yep, yep. If the Jets wanted to go after Jimmy Garoppolo,
Right. I mean, I would say that would only be if it was a little longer and they really weren't confident in
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco, exactly. But I
Yep.
mean, the Jets had a rough week overall anyway, because remember earlier in the week, Mekhi Becton
Also went
went down
down,
with
and
an
he's
injury.
out
Yeah,
for the
with a
season
knee
too.
injury. And
Yeah,
so
and
their offensive line is starting to feel some injury woes already.
yeah, and to lose Mekhi Becton is massive because that dude is a phenomenal, phenomenal tackle. Like that is a guy that is the anchor to your offensive line, and to lose him for the season, you
Yeah.
kind of feel bad for Zach Wilson because it's like, what are they going to do in that regard? Like, you just hope that he doesn't get seriously hurt from this.
Well, yeah, you hope he can come back from it. I mean, they hope to have plugged that hole. They went out and signed veteran Dwayne Brown to fill that gap almost right away.
Yes, yeah.
And so, that's somebody who's been blocking for Russell Wilson for a number of years. So, presumably, he will be a good fit in there. He just, Mekhi Becton was a unique, dominant talent
Very
and
true.
young
Yep.
too.
Yes. But yeah, that's a move or that's an injury that you hate to see. Obviously, that happened not even in the game, but in practice,
Yeah,
which
that
is
happened.
even worse.
Yeah.
You really hate to see that. But moving over to the next game, we saw the Arizona Cardinals versus the Cincinnati Bengals. We saw the Bengals lose to the Cardinals 36-23. But again, uh, Joe Burrow and Kyler Murray didn't touch the field. Obviously, you weren't going to see either of these guys touch the field. Joe Burrow still recovering from that appendix surgery at this point, and Kyler Murray, you're not really going to put him out there unless you're really worried. But interesting stat line for Drew Plitt, quarterback for the Bengals, was 6 for 6, 76 yards, one passing touchdown, zero interceptions for a perfect passer rating. So he had himself a good day. Trace McSorley also had himself a pretty decent day for 13 out of 22, 163 yards, one touchdown, zero interceptions for a rating of 97.3. So both pretty decent for the top, passers in the game for each team.
Yep, both were good. I mean, like I said, I tried watching some of that game, but it was fairly dry and fairly boring with no real stars playing in the game.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Still, two teams that respectively could be fighting for the top of their division.
Yeah,
Then we see the final game of the night where the Green Bay Packers lose to the San Francisco 49ers, just like how it ended last season for both teams.
yeah.
Yeah, and
And I did watch a little bit more of this game, and you'll be happy to know that when Aaron Rodgers finally does hang it up, Jordan Love did not look good.
yeah, 13 for 24, 176 yards, two TDs, but three interceptions.
Yeah.
And
And those interceptions were bad too. Like
yeah,
he looked down his receiver the whole way, and the defense just read his eyes.
which is not something that a quarterback should be doing. And then on the
A
opposite
third
side,
year, yeah, a
yeah,
third year who is slated to be, the replacement and the next coming of the messiahs in Green Bay. So I don't think that's going to be the case.
uh, let's hope. Let's hope. But then Trey Lance, obviously, for the limited time that he played, he got in there for, five passing reps. He was 4 for 5, 92 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions for a perfect passer rating. But yeah, he immediately kind of came out really quickly and just threw an absolute dart to for 76 yards for Gary. That big play for the 49ers there, and that's something that you really like to see from Trey Lance. Obviously didn't get a lot of playing time, but you still like to see him go out there and still shine when he can.
Yeah,
And
and honestly, that feels like that was a game time decision when he went out there and he played that well on that first drive. I think the coaches and management probably were like, you know what? That is the best confidence boost he can have. We put him out there anymore today, and it's just we're just gonna get diminishing gains at this point. So let's back off. We'll sit him down. We'll go, good job, great drive. We'll put you in more next week.
right, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the best possible outcome that the Niners could have with Trey Lance on his first drive. So
Oh, exactly. You love to see those types of plays, like because that is a big play against a decent defense. Like
yeah,
you're not going to sit here and say like, oh, the Green Bay Packers have the best defense in the NFL, but you're not going to say they're the worst. They're right there in the middle. Like they're a serious defense, and they added a bunch of defensive pieces this year to help them along. But going forward into today's game, we have quite the set of games to look at today. Obviously, starting the day, we have two games here at 11 o'clock where we see the Panthers and the Washington Commanders go up against each other. Then we also have the Kansas City Chiefs coming into Chicago to play the Bears. Then at 2 o'clock, we have the Indianapolis Colts versus the Buffalo Bills. Then moving to 5 o'clock, we've got Seattle coming to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Then we see the Dolphins and Buccaneers at 5:30, the Saints and Texans at 6, Cowboys, Broncos at 7, Rams and Chargers at 8, and then tomorrow we see the lone game of the Minnesota Vikings versus the Las Vegas Raiders at 2:25. So, a lot of games today and no games tomorrow really, which feels weird to me.
yeah, but that's pretty normal for preseason.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
seem to roll more Saturday games during the preseason.
this is true. And so, obviously, looking at today's game for the Panthers and the Commanders, obviously, news from the Panthers camp is that Carson Wentz looks like dog poo. He does not look good so far this year, like in
Nope.
the actual camps. And we're also going to get to see who is the actual starting quarterback going to be for this game for the Panthers. It says that Baker Mayfield is going to start the preseason opener against the Panthers. So that is big, obviously, because that means he's slowly starting to beat out Sam Darnell. But is that just the case of we're going to give Baker the start this week and then we're going to give Sam the start next week? Like, what's the situation looking like for that moving forward? So it's going to be that's going to be an interesting game to watch to see who out of those two quarterbacks does better.
Well, and I mean, both those teams are hunting for their starting quarterback. I know the
Yes.
Commanders have Wentz, but as you said, camp hasn't been great. He rarely has a good camp though, um, and so we're gonna get to see him in game and see if that translates, and if maybe Washington hits the panic button and has to move on to one of their backups.
Yeah. Yeah. And moving forward, then we have the Kansas City Chiefs versus my Chicago Bears at Chicago. The turf in Chicago looks fucking horrendous today.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, I'm just like funny enough, somebody tweeted out a picture and they said this is not photoshopped and they posted four different pictures of the actual field at Soldier Field. It does not look good. And obviously this has always been an issue with Soldier Field. This is another reason why the Bears want to move out of Soldier Field and go to Arlington Heights and build their own stadium and such and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just looking at it like Jesus. Like someone also tweeted out, Andy's gonna put Mahomes on that turf. Is he nuts? And I'm looking at this going, you're gonna put Justin Fields on that turf? Are you nuts? Like it just looks horrible, and yeah, that is not something that you like to see as a fan, or just to see that something out of everyone's control in the game,
Hmm.
a big time injury just because of the fucking grass they play on. Which is scary to
Well,
think about.
and that's interesting. Have the Bears been holding their camp at Soldier Field?
Nope,
No,
nope.
okay. I was just curious because I mean I've been seeing a lot of reports on the Bears that they're having some serious injury issues in that wide receiver core.
That they are, yeah, and like they're obviously we are down N'Keal Harry. He's gonna be out for at least 8 weeks with that ankle surgery.
Yeah.
Valus Jones is day to day. The one thing with Matt Eberflus is that if it's a significant injury, he will tell you what's going on. But if it's day to day, he will just say it's day to day. He won't even tell you what the affliction is. So it's kind of hard to know with fully what's going on with some of our day to day players. But yeah, the Bears have been kind of dealing with a little bit of the injury bug so far this off season or preseason.
A little bit. And I mean, while we're on the Bears too, you got some bad news this earlier this week as well regarding Roquan Smith and how he has requested a trade out of Chicago now.
We
Since they're
will
not,
talk about that later.
we'll talk about that later. Okay,
Yeah, I want to go through the preseason before you see a very sad, depressed man.
fair, fair. I didn't want to let you get away with not discussing that.
I know you did. Yep.
Hey,
You bastard.
it'd be the same thing if it was like TJ Watt or something. You'd be all
No,
over me.
no, I hear you, and I respect you being on top of me for that. Next we see the Indianapolis Colts versus the Buffalo Bills. So obviously, the first time we're gonna get to see Matt Ryan in an Indianapolis Colts uniform actually playing. I doubt he's actually gonna play today though, so we're still gonna have to wait on that. But
And if he
yeah,
does, it'll be like some of the other starters we've seen. I think where it's the first drive of the game, we'll see maybe 4 or 5 passes out of him, and then he'll be done for the game.
yeah, just looking at the quarterback roster here, obviously we have Nick Foles, then we have Sam Ellinger, and then we have Jack Conn. So you're more or less going to see probably more of Nick Foles, who is their dedicated backup, and then third, fourth quarter more Sam Ellinger,
Yeah.
which isn't really too much of a surprise. Buffalo, I have serious doubts that Josh Allen is actually going to play today, because why would they risk Josh Allen? And they have Matt Barkley and Case Keenum, so it's going to be kind of trying to figure out who really is their backup for that team.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the Bills are in a good position that way. They're testing out to see who their second string is going to be. They know who their first string quarterback is. And
without a shred of a doubt, one player
that's what
for the
surprises me going back and having the Chiefs actually playing Patrick Mahomes. That's just bizarre.
yeah, yeah. Uh we will see. We will see what happens with that outcome. But the one player that I would like to watch in that game is James Cook, the younger brother of Dalvin Cook, who was drafted, I believe it was either in the second or the third round of this year's draft to the Buffalo Bills, because to me that was the Bills' biggest weakness, is they didn't really have this big time running back that they could add to their offense. And,
Mhm.
depending on what James Cook is, he could potentially be that guy for them. Then
Right.
obviously we jump to Pittsburgh, where we see your Seattle Seahawks, or not your Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks go up against your Pittsburgh Steelers. How do you feel about that game?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to finally get to see Mitch Trubisky and see what he can do out there. Because we know that he's going to be starting the game, and Mason Rudolph is likely following him up. Um, I've been hearing that Kenny Pickett isn't quite where the coaching staff wants, so I don't know if we're going to see him today. From what I've been hearing, he probably will be held out of this first game.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's likely going to be split between Trubisky and Rudolph. They are the clear 1 and 2 right now, fighting for that starting role. I don't see Kenny Pickett starting straight away. He had a much improved week this week in camp. He's starting to feel more comfortable, but I think the coaching staff's looking at it and going, he's improving, so why rush him?
But you still want to get him some time with.
He'll get in some of the later preseason games, I think, but I just don't think that he'll be out there today. They're more trying to sort out who the starting quarterback's going to be first before they start worrying about building Kenny Pickett up too much.
Fair. I,
Yeah.
I would I would still throw him in there even against the threes, just to see what he can do.
It is
But
possible we may see him late in the game. It's always a possibility, but I know their key goal right now is who's our number one, and then sorting out the twos and threes on in that receiving core.
yep,
Who's going to get that spot behind Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool.
fair. Yeah. But yeah, obviously with this, the Seattle Seahawks, they've officially announced that Geno Smith is their starter currently at the moment. So, yeah, wow, yay! If you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, you're sitting back going like, we had Russell Wilson, now we have either the combination of Geno Smith, Jacob Eason, or Drew Lock. It's
Yeah.
like quite the turnaround for the Seattle Seahawks in the quarterback department. I doubt we're going to see much of DK Metcalf during this game,
No.
just because why would he want to play in that?
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
exactly it. Yeah, I don't see a lot of that either. But I
yeah,
mean, and none of those guys are ever gonna hold up to Russell Wilson's legacy. But I mean, I do remember Geno Smith coming into the league, and he was another one of those quarterbacks that there was a lot of promise, but he got drafted to the Jets.
yeah,
And we see a lot of guys get drafted to the Jets, and their potential just goes to waste and fizzles out. So who knows? Maybe this is the opportunity he needs.
very true, very true. But I'll be interested to see how many of the actual starters for Pittsburgh actually go out there on the defensive side of the ball, because you know
Yeah.
we'll see if kind of we'll get a judgment feel of how they actually are. But this is kind of a bad judgment because they're going up against really a poor offense. But I'm interested to see more of the Steelers offense perform. Like, I doubt Najee's really going to get a whole lot of carries, if any,
No.
really.
No, I think we're
George
going to see
Pickens
more
has
Benny
been looking
Snell.
really good.
Hmm?
Uh, George Pickens, your wide receiver that drafted in the second round, has
Yep.
apparently been looking god tier.
Yeah,
like
he's been
oddly.
looking real good in camp so far. Like at this point, he's sort of penciled in on the depth chart as that number 3 wide receiver, which says
Really
a
is.
lot because as I pointed out last week, we've got 11 on the roster right now.
Yeah,
So
very
there's a
true.
lot of competition for him, and a lot of them are not bad players at all.
Nope.
And so it's
Who's
going to
your
be
number
interesting
two?
to
Is it
see that all those see who stands out in actual game.
true?
Because it's one thing in practice when it's easy to go up and make those high point catches because the cornerbacks aren't throwing you to the ground in practice, whereas in the game that's going to be happening. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't expect to see Najee Harris. I don't expect to see TJ Watt or Minka Fitzpatrick very much either. Cameron Hayward, I think, will probably play a little bit more just because he's sort of trying to take that leadership role of the team with Ben Roethlisberger gone now. He's been
Yep.
doing a lot more of the mentoring, especially with his younger brother on the other side of the ball now too. So he's
Yes.
he's really trying to lead that defense and figure out what it is, and so I think we'll see him a little bit more than those
Yeah.
other two stars.
Fair enough. But moving over, we are going to see the like I said earlier, the Dolphins versus the Buccaneers. Again, we're probably not going to see a lot of Tua. We're not going to really see that Tua Tyreek connection yet this
No,
game. I doubt either of those guys are going to play a whole lot, if at all. But I'm interested to watch that game because we get to see Mike McDaniel actually have his first start as a play caller or as a head coach for a team. So it'll be interesting to see how he can balance it as opposed to just being a play caller for what he
hmm
was with the 49ers last year to now being a play caller and an entire manager of a squad. So it'll be good to see that. Obviously, we're not going to see Brady play at all. I would be severely shocked to see Brady actually don pads this
oh
game,
no,
but
he's not even there. He's on a 10-day approved break from training camp and stuff, so he's
oh,
not playing this week or next week. Yeah,
yeah.
and
So I
but that's something that apparently had been approved with coaching staff like back before at the start of training camp. That
okay,
he
well,
he had some personal business he had to take care of in the middle of August, and they were like, "Yeah, that's fine. We'll roll without you through the preseason."
yeah, and it's not like it's Tom Brady we're talking about here, who
Right?
we really need to see what he's capable of doing at this point in his career. It's fucking Tom Brady, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that very easily can just be like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm taking some time off, and you guys can deal with it."
Yeah,
There's like one of those guys in every league. Tom Brady, LeBron James. Very few that can get away with it. But when those guys speak up, you go, "Yeah, yes, sir.
yeah.
You take the time you need."
You literally like bow down like you're in the presence of a god. Like yes, sir. Like please, sorry,
Right?
yes, do what you got to do, sir.
Yeah, it's almost like he had to be like, no, I have to have a like lengthy 10-day vacation, take Giselle and the kids out on the lake and spend some time with the family so
Yep.
that they would approve me coming back from my retirement. That this was
Y-
part of the deal. It's like you can come out of retirement, but I want my summer vacation.
Right? Yeah. It's almost gonna be like him sitting back. Like, do I really need to play preseason? Like,
Right?
this is third year with the team, third year in the offense. Brian Leftwich still their offensive coordinator.
Yep.
So it's
New
not
head
like he's
coach.
new head coach, but he's been with the team for the entirety of Tom Brady's tenure there. So it's not really anything new or different for him. It's just a different voice saying, "Oh, hey Brady, we're going on offense now. Time to go out."
Yeah.
So
As if anybody's had to say that to him in the last
it,
20 years. He's
it,
always got his helmet in his hand ready to go.
oh, exactly. But just in that rare event of like, oh, hey, we just got an interception, guys. Time to go out on offense type
Yeah.
situation. But yeah, then we look at the Saints versus the Texans. So I guess we get to see Jameis Winston and his new slew of wide receivers. We get to see like that is such a really really good wide receiver 3 unit. With Michael Thomas, then Jarvis Landry, and then obviously the rookie that they drafted, Chris Olave.
Yep.
That is going to be a fearsome wide receiver duo or trio, I should say.
They've
for
given him
Jameis Winston.
every opportunity to succeed this season.
They
They,
really
they
have, yes.
they've gone out and put an offense around Jameis Winston. They gave him a contract as well, and they're like, "Look, you wanna see and be our guy? Here's your chance.
Yeah,
Prove it to us, or if we finish bad enough and one of those young quarterbacks drops into our lap next year in the draft, we're
you
taking
best
him and we're trading
believe.
him."
Well, they don't even have a first round pick next year.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
They
Right,
traded
they
it
traded
to
away this year to get
Philadelphia.
Olave.
No, they traded it up so they can get a second first round pick, and then they took Trevor Penning,
Oh,
which again, I love Penning.
yeah.
I thought he was a phenomenal tackle, but I
Mhm.
was also sitting there going like, you're telling me you are trading a first round pick in next year's draft when there are legitimate quarterbacks, not like just legitimate quarterbacks, franchise defining guys, and you're like, nah, we don't need that. We've got
The,
Jameis Winston.
they must have seen something in Jameis Winston through the offseason that we just haven't had the opportunity to see.
I guess, but
I mean,
uh
like you go back to when he was in college. He was phenomenal.
well, even that last year for Tampa Bay, he led the league in passing yards, but he
Yeah.
was 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, which is not something that you'll want to see.
Well, and he did have that
Eye
LASIK eye
surgery.
surgery or
Yep,
whatever after that.
this is true. But
And
yeah,
so,
going into this game, we get to see Dennis Allen, new head coach for the Saints, and we get to see Lovie Smith, new head coach for the Texans. I expect the Texans defense to be a lot more improved, but
yes.
yeah, the offense for the Texans, it's kind of gonna be like, all right. Looking at the quarterback situation, obviously Davis Mills should be penciled in as the starting quarterback for the remainder of the year. We get to see Kyle Allen and Jeff Briscoe as the backup quarterbacks. So not a whole lot of real talent there on the defense or the offensive side of the ball here. Just looking at their wide receiver
I mean, they
unit,
do have Brandon Cooks.
they do have Brandon Cooks, but they have a more aged Brandon Cooks and a lot less polished. Obviously, he's dealt with injuries over the last couple of years. John Mechie, a wide receiver out of Alabama, unfortunately is not going to be playing for them this year due to you know health issues relating with cancer, which is unfortunate. Hopefully, he gets better sooner rather than later. But yeah, this is going to be. I honestly think uh, the Texans are still probably one of the worst teams in the league this year. They're going to be kind of in that conversation to be fighting for that number one spot or in the draft with the Atlanta Falcons. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Then later tonight we see the Dallas Cowboys and the Denver Broncos. Those two teams have been fighting during their joint practice so far this offseason, which so this game is going to have a little bit of bad blood, but obviously we're not going to see Russell Wilson. We're not going to see Dak Prescott. And if we do, we'll pray for both of those guys' safety that we don't see them for too long. But
Right.
yeah, it should be an interesting game with that. Obviously, 7 o'clock game, later game for sure. But Cowboys, obviously they have Mike McCarthy. Kind of feels like he's in a big playoff year or fire type situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jerry Jones will not go out there and say that, but it kind of has that feeling where it's just like he needs to do something significant in the playoffs or he's gone because Jason Garrett, when he was the head coach for the Cowboys, he was doing the exact same thing with
Yeah.
arguably a worse roster at most times. And you're like, why would we fire that guy and bring in a new guy if they're just going to constantly be doing the same thing here?
Yeah, for same result, exactly.
It,
Yeah, this is a make or break year for the coaching staff there for sure.
it definitely feels that way for sure. And, looking at the quarterback situation, like what we said, we doubt we're going to see a lot of Dak Prescott. Will Greer, Cooper Rush, Ben DiNucci are going to be kind of the main guys circling around for the Cowboys. Then for the Broncos, obviously quarterback wise, Again, I would seriously doubt we're going to see a lot of Russell Wilson, if any. But then we also have Brent Retpin and then Josh Johnson. So those are the backups there. But yeah, new head coach in Denver here. Obviously, we have Nathaniel Hackett, offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. So we last year, so we're going to get to see how he performs and in a new role this year as the official head coach for the Denver Broncos. Then finally, the final game of today, where we see the Rams and Chargers, both obviously two top teams. We could potentially see this team in the Super Bowl later this year
Hmm.
because they are both that good. Stafford, Herbert, probably not playing. We're probably not going to see Donald play. Uh, Probably not going to see Khalil Mack play. Like what?
No.
Both teams have an excellent defensive star and a really good quarterback. Obviously, the Rams have Donald and Stafford, and the Chargers have Mack and Herbert. So you're probably not going to see either Joey Bosa play either. It should be a fun game to watch. But I know you've been waiting on it. You want to talk about Roquan Smith. That's,
That's that's tough,
uh,
man. I mean,
yep.
he came out this week, and the Bears just aren't offering him what he wants, and so now he's saying he wants out.
So with that, obviously in his message, he stated that he felt the deal that was given to him was not satisfactory.
Hmm.
The Bears offered him $95 million, which again is a lot of money. Um, that still puts him up close to the top of the linebacker market. Obviously, I've been saying this. You give Roquan Smith whatever he wants in a deal, because let's be honest here, he deserves it. Like, he is that good of a product on the field. But yeah, the Bears looked at that, and you know, there's potentially been some tampering going on from the Roquan Smith side that came out, where someone who is associated with Roquan Smith has been calling teams around the league trying to see what a trade they could get. And if any team actually engages in that, that
Yep.
would be tampering, because the Chicago Bears have not allowed him to seek a trade. So, you're kind of looking at Roquan Smith. Obviously, with Smith, he is a little immature on the outside or off the field side of things. The Bears have been really supportive with him the last few years. I love him on the field. I think he's a good enough kid off the field. Obviously, we're the same age. We're both 25. I know damn well what at 25, 24, 23, 22, the stupid mistakes that you can make, because I made them.
Yep.
But, just in my case, I'm just not a, professional football player making $1 million a year. I'm just some idiot going around doing those things. But the Bears have supported him. They've said, you know what, we want to give you the $95 million. I think it was for 5 years. I would even just up that to $100 million for 5 years, and I would take away the D incentives that he had in his contract, because I don't think you need to have those in there. Like Darius Leonard and Fred Warner don't have those in their contract. So I do kind of look at it, and it doesn't seem necessary to have those there
Hmm.
for me. You just you right now the Chicago Bears hold all the power.
They do.
And I do not believe the Bears are going to trade away Smith, because if you're general manager Ryan Poles in your first off season as the Chicago Bears, most people have looked at him so far this year and said it hasn't been great. Obviously, he traded away Khalil Mack. He got rid of a bunch of fan favorites. But you know what? A lot of people from the Bears side of things go, you know what? These were good moves, because we now have created $90 million in caps for next year, which is huge.
Yep.
Which is huge. And another reason why I look at Smith and go, pay him $20 million a year. Like, whatever. You have the space. Like next year, if you pay Roquan Smith $20 million, guess what? You still have $70 million in cap space to work with, which is still like I think it's at the top 4 or 5 teams of cap space after paying one player, like a big time contract. Like that's huge for the Bears to have. But if you were to trade Roquan Smith away, the only way that I look at that as truly being acceptable is you are going to have to bleed a team dry. That meaning you're going to have to get 2 first-round picks. You're going to have to get a flurry of mid-round picks, and then at least a roster player. And I look at the situation with other teams around the league is that
Mhm.
they can't really afford to pay Smith at this point.
Well, because that's the other side of it too. Not only are they going to have to throw a lot of picks and possibly a star player back, they also have to be able to give Roquan Smith the deal he wants.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, which is going to be tough. Like, there's very few teams out there that could do that. I mean, really, I think the only two that I've been hearing a lot about are the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys. Are the only
yeah,
ones that could potentially have the draft capital and the cap space after moving a player along with it to sign him.
yeah.
And it's tough because, I mean, I think part of the Bears' concern is bringing Matt Eberflus in. His defense is a little bit of a different style and doesn't really match up with Roquan Smith's playing style.
Oh
You
no,
know,
that's not a worry. Like Roquan Smith and Matt Eberflus, one of the reasons why Eberflus was brought in was because of Smith to take him from an elite linebacker to looking at what he did with Darius Leonard, who that year was supposed to be a bust at the linebacker spot, turned him into one of the best linebackers. I don't think they're worried about that, but
well, it's just more that the play style of the Eberflus defense was a lot more of that edge rushing, fast, speedy linebacker, whereas Roquan Smith, as we've discussed, is more of that stay in the middle, read the field, make the read and react, which is a little bit different from what Eberflus usually is used to coaching. And so I think that's the only concern is they're looking at it going, well, if Eberflus is doing that fast-paced offense, is that going to diminish the numbers that Roquan Smith is putting up? Is
no.
that going to affect him and hurt him because he's not as good at rushing the quarterback as he is at staying back and shutting down the run game?
The position that they have Roquan Smith playing is the or the weak side linebacker. They're literally just looking at him going, you are going to be Darius Leonard in our defense. And if you look at Darius Leonard, what did Darius Leonard do? Obviously, he kind of sat back, dealt with the rush running. He was able to rush the quarterback, and Roquan Smith is able to rush the quarterback, no problem.
Mhm.
Um, uh, you know, I have no
I'm just
doubt.
saying that was one of the primary concerns I had heard being reported, was just that Roquan Smith was not the exact prototype for an Eberflus style defense. I don't argue that you know Eberflus coming in with Roquan Smith isn't going, oh yeah, this guy won't work. Like 100% he will. I think that's just part of the Bears management concern, giving him that big contract going. Is he still going to get 100 plus tackles in this new style of defense?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt, no questions whatsoever. I think the only way he doesn't get 100 plus tackles is if he misses time.
Yeah.
And even then, we've seen him miss time and still lead the team in tackles in his 4 years and have nothing less than 100. So, but yeah, that is a big one that obviously needs to get resolved. And like I said on Twitter earlier this week, I said if the Bears do decide to trade Roquan Smith away, I would desperately want them to draft Noah Swell, linebacker out of Oregon. The dude was a tackling machine last year. The dude had 114 tackles and 4 sacks for the Ducks last year. I'm sitting back going like, if you trade Roquan Smith away and you want to immediately find a possible replacement for him, that's a guy like if the Bears, for instance, finish in that 18 to like 24 range, I would still be really happy with them drafting Noah Swell anyways to pair him with Roquan Smith because like, you want to have a tackling tandem. Like,
Yep.
yeah, add those two guys together. That would make me. I can't quite say what that would make me on the YouTubes, but it would make me a very very happy man. And this whole Roquan Smith stuff has just been an absolute taxing time for Chicago Bears fans, just because it's just it just feels like a player that still wants to be in Chicago, and he's just saying, I want you to trade me just to get the contract that he wants. But and from a team standpoint, you look at him and you go, we can't allocate every single amount of our dollars to one player. We need to
Nope.
be able to build a proper team, but you also need to pay the guys that are the star players on your team. That's a reason that they're stars.
Yep.
So, and
And
again,
so
when
I
you
mean,
have $90 million, you can afford to pay a guy $20 million a year,
yeah.
which resets the linebacker market. And that's something that Roquan Smith wants.
Yep.
He wants to be paid $100 million over his next contract, and he wants to reset the market. I'm like, yeah. If I'm Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears, I look at Roquan Smith and I go, we are going to give you a contract with no de-escalators, which is something that apparently they've had in the contract, and you give him a 5-year deal, $100 million, so that's $20 million a year, fully guaranteed. Yep, to me that's the deal. I think he signs the dotted line on that. But
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Could be wrong. But
Yeah, I know it's tough to say exactly where each side is on it, but I mean, he's technically not under contract right now, is he? Or is he in
no,
the
he
last
is.
year? He's
Yeah,
in the last
he's
year?
on his 5th year. So
Okay. Okay. So him skipping out would result in suspensions.
well, the Bears were playing really, really nice with him for the first bit of this, where
Mhm.
they put him on the pup list. And obviously they said that because like, oh, he had a disclosed day-to-day injury that they were working with, but the dude is as healthy as can be, in my opinion.
Yep.
And they did that solely because they didn't want to fine him for skipping out on practices. Which I looked at that and go, you know what, they're doing business in good faith. They're
Yeah.
like, you know what, this is a situation where we're discussing a contract. We're gonna put him in a situation of where we don't have to fine him. That information came out immediately. They were like, all right, you're coming off the pup list, and we can now potentially start fining you.
Yeah.
Roquan Smith can potentially be fined by the Chicago Bears almost $600,000 today if he does not participate in today's game. They could have fined him the last couple days for missing out on practice, which I think it was like $50,000 for each day that he missed. But I haven't heard anything of them doing that yet. I don't think that's the route that they should go down, because I think suspending a guy $500,000 for missing a preseason game
Yeah.
is, when you're trying to sign him to a long-term deal and he's already put in a trade request, it's like, yeah, maybe not. That I don't think that shows good. Even if you're trying to send a message, it's one of those things where it's like,
It just creates a bigger wedge between the two
yeah,
sides and makes it more likely, and it takes some of the Bears' power away at that point too, because the more upset and the more willing Roquan Smith is to sit out and accept these fines, the lower the returns will be for the Bears on a trade.
well, yeah, the longer this goes on, it hurts the Bears, but I
Yeah.
don't think we're gonna see it go on for a whole lot longer. I honestly think that the Bears are going to look at something next week. Either he signs or he trades a trade away, just because I just don't think Ryan Poles wants to deal with the headache. I was watching an interview with Matt Eberflus. He was doing a press conference, and every single day it was essentially just Roquan Smith filled. So you can even see Eberflus just getting annoyed with it. He's like, guys, like I already said at the opening part of this, I'm not gonna really answer much of Roquan Smith questions.
Yeah.
Like he didn't obviously say that, but like you can just get the sense you're just like he was done with the questions. He didn't want to see it anymore. And this entire situation for all parties has just is just really, really annoying and frustrating for everything that they see. And one of those things you just look at as a fan, you get annoyed with it, seeing it so much more now, and it is just such an utter pain in the ass to deal with. And I hope it gets resolved today, you know.
Right.
But I know that's not going to happen. But let's hope going into this upcoming week, we can just get this situated. We can get this done, and everyone can be happier. That's all I'm asking for right now is just to let us all be a little bit more happy with the situation going on.
So if worst case ended up happening and they
Yep.
have to move on from Roquan Smith and they find a trade partner that'll give them a couple of picks and a star player back, what player would you like to see coming back to the Bears in return for Smith?
It really depends on the team that we go to. Like obviously you're
The
talking
two
about.
front runners that I was saying would be Seattle and Dallas, I believe.
So if I look, I'll look at Dallas first here. In my opinion, you're gonna have to get at least 2 first-round picks from Dallas, and then a couple of mid-round picks. But then like the player aspect of it, you know, eh, it's one of those situations. Do you try to replace Roquan Smith at the linebacker spot? Like you could look at that and go, all right, well, we also want Leighton Vander Esch from the linebacker spot. He was drafted same year as Smith, all same first round, but a handful of picks later. Obviously, you could look at them and be like, "Hey, we want Micah Parsons," but I think the Cowboys would laugh you out of the room, and it's just
Yeah,
not
I
something.
believe the purpose in the Cowboys making that trade would be so that they could pair Parsons and Smith together.
Which would be insane. Um, but then potentially looking at the wide receiver standpoint, obviously they're not going to give up CD Lamb. They would be unlikely to give up Michael Gallup. Not there's not really any major guys that here that I'm looking at the roster that I would be like, oh yes, I would want them to throw that player in on this particular trade. Maybe like a Zach Martin, but again, that guy is way too high profile and he's definitely older. And he's quite expensive. So for the Cowboys, that's a tough one just because eh, they have a lot of players that you would like to look at and be like, "Oh, I'd like to pick up that guy," but it feels like the Cowboys realistically wouldn't want to move on from him. When it comes to the Seattle Seahawks, that even becomes less because you're like, "Do I really want any of these guys?" Looking at the roster here, obviously the big guy that you'd look at is DK Metcalf. Obviously, there was potential trade talk throughout the entire offseason with that, and they did sign him to a longer term deal. But you kind of look at that going like, you bring in DK Metcalf, he's already signed long term, so you don't really have to worry about the contract side of it, and he'd be great. But that one's also a tough pill to swallow because yeah, you're helping out Justin Fields. Yeah, like I would accept DK Metcalf in that regard.
Yeah.
But again, kind of looking at Seattle, it's tough to find really anyone super talented that I'd be like, yes, maybe Damian Lewis, the guard that they drafted early on, but again, they're not going to give up their first round pick this year for a
No.
guy.
And if they did, that would diminish the number of first round picks they sent back to you as well. I would think. I would think if they're adding in an already first round pick from this year's draft, then it would be like, oh, you're only getting one other first now.
Yeah, which is not
I get
something
what
that
you're
I
saying,
want.
and
Yeah.
that's just it. Like, no matter who, like, if it ends up happening, no matter who it is and where he goes, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for Bears fans losing Roquan Smith, no matter what you get back.
Yeah. I heard someone mention on Twitter, this was funny enough, a Steelers fan who said this. He's like, "Oh, Chicago, we'll give you Chase Claypool and we'll give you Devin Bush and a second round pick. You should be really happy with that return." And I'm sitting back like, go fuck yourself, first
Well,
off.
not only that, but they're not like we don't have the cap space to give Roquan Smith the contract he wants,
Yeah,
and that's the point. Is it's got to be a team that's going to pay him what he wants,
yeah,
and the Steelers can't do that. We would have to have TJ Watt or Minka Fitzpatrick included in that trade deal to free up the cap space to be able to give Roquan Smith what he wants. And I wouldn't part with either one of those guys to trade for Roquan Smith.
All right, all
You know,
right.
not to
How
take
about this trade for the Steelers? The Steelers get Roquan Smith. We get 2 first-round picks and TJ Watt.
right. Like, no, that's my point. Is even if it was straight up TJ Watt for Roquan Smith, I wouldn't go for it. Not taking away from Roquan. It's just with the defense we have right now, TJ Watt's the perfect fit for it.
Well, and
You bring Roquan Smith in, and you've got to change that defense around. It then becomes more of a cover defense instead of a pass rushing defense.
well, and you can't trade away the defensive player of the year in
No,
TJ Watt. And TJ Watt and Roquan Smith, yes, they're both technically right outside linebackers, but they do
but
very, very different roles. Like
yeah,
this is why I hate they play the same position. TJ Watt is an edge rusher. Roquan Smith is a linebacker. These guys are very, very different. If you put Roquan Smith on the edge for the entire season, like what they do with TJ,
yep,
he's not getting the same numbers. And if you put TJ Watt at the linebacker spot and ask him to do what Roquan Smith is doing, his numbers are going to look laughable in comparison. So, but yeah, no, I just did that to,
yeah.
poke
Yeah,
at
because I
your.
mean, I thought of that too. Like the biggest problem for the Bears right now, due to the injury bug that's hitting them, is that wide receiver spot.
Well,
You know,
even then, it's just the wide receiver spot, even without the injury bugs, is one of those things that we needed to improve
well,
on
exactly.
anyways. So
That's why it's gotten so much worse with these injuries, and that's why DK Metcalf was one of the ones that popped out to me when somebody said Seattle. I was like, okay, that would make sense. And they've got the cap space to be able to give Roquan Smith whatever he wants.
true, very true.
And granted, I did look at the Steelers and go, well, we could part with Chase Claypool, and Devin Bush, maybe one other guy, but we don't have the money to pay Roquan Smith,
Yeah,
because it wouldn't work financially, and so he wouldn't want that trade.
it'd be a very, very tough situation all around to begin with.
Yeah.
And it again, I just really, really hope this entire situation gets resolved sooner rather than later
Mhm.
because it's one
Yeah,
that I hate to see.
the only other team I had heard, except they don't have the draft picks available to make the trade, were the Broncos.
Yeah, I also heard that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, with what picks,
Right?
you gave your all of your picks to Seattle, so you know, I also heard the Atlanta because obviously Atlanta, and I'm sitting back going like, yeah, if Atlanta wants to give us their first round pick this year and next year when they're really, really bad, and give us like a third overall pick,
Yep.
yeah, I'd be okay with that. Obviously, I would hate it, but like people have been saying Atlanta just solely because of Roquan Smith is a kid from Georgia. He grew up not too far away from Atlanta. Obviously, he played at Georgia at in university, so it likely fit. But Atlanta's not offering for Roquan Smith.
No, no. What would you say if they did offer and they went, hey, we'll give you a one first round pick, one third round pick, and Kyle Pitts for Roquan Smith? That's a tough one, right? Being able to pair Pitts and Komet together, make a real dominant two tight end set.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I like it. Of what was it? A first round pick, a third round pick,
Yeah.
and Pitts.
Yeah, you're not getting more than one first round pick out of them if you're getting Pitts as well.
And the
Because
first
that
round pick
essentially
is
is
for
two
this
first
year.
round picks.
Yeah, is the
Yeah.
first round pick
It's
going to
for
be?
this year, but it's not there because they've got two firsts this year, right?
Do they?
Coming up.
Let me take a look here.
I could be wrong.
I'm just taking a quick look here, but if it was Atlanta's first round pick this year, I would definitely be interested. So taking a look here at Atlanta going in, Yes, they do have 2 first-round picks this year. They have Cleveland's, it looks like. Oh, wait, no, they don't. Uh, looking at yeah, they only have
They only have the one.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, so it would be their first rounder.
Which and again, even with Roquan Smith, just the way that team is in general, they're not gonna be good, and, like, for them, they'd be looking at that going like, we'd be giving up a 3rd overall pick and Kyle Pitts,
Right?
like a
No,
top
I
5
know.
pick,
Like it
yeah.
wouldn't happen. I just wanted to throw it at you that you'd be like, "Oh, that is actually pretty good for my offense."
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I already have a guy in mind that if the Chicago Bears do decide to trade away Roquan Smith, that I'm looking at going like, give me Noah Swell.
Yep.
I like, I again, if the Bears end up in that range, even with Roquan Smith, where he's kind of select projected to be, I'm like, yeah, give him to me. I'd
Yep.
be really, really happy with having those two guys on the same linebacking unit together, just because that just it that's terrifying. That's terrifying. Like most college linebackers don't have 100 plus tackles in their entire career, let alone a season. Like college is
Especially playing in a division like the Pac-12.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then also having the rusher, the edge rushing side of things where he got 4 sacks as well. Like I'm looking at Swell going like this kid is kind of comparable already to Roquan Smith, and I'm really really excited to see. I'm a big fan of that kid already, and I'd love to see him come to Chicago if Roquan Smith is there or isn't there.
Yeah.
If Roquan Smith isn't there, I'm pounding the table going, get this fucking kid in here now, please and thank you. But yeah,
This is going to be, I think, the defining part of the early days of Ryan Poles. Whether he can get this deal done or not with Roquan Smith, one way or the other, whether it be sign him, he's happy, and then see what happens with it. Will it be a good deal? Will the Bears then propel up towards the top of that division, or do they move away from him, and what happens to the Bears then? But this is a big one for Ryan Poles. I think that's why he's having a tough time with it.
the one thing I will say about Ryan Poles that I respected the ever loving hell out of is that the day that Roquan Smith, tweeted his message and, saying he wants a trade, he immediately came out and had a press conference to talk
Yeah,
about it, which is you don't see a lot of general managers do that. And it's something that the previous regime in Chicago with Ryan Pace, the dude like he would have been like, no, well, we're in conversation with this, and then just kind of moved it. He wouldn't have called a press conference on himself the day of. It would have been something like a week, like the week of type situation that he would have talked
yeah.
about, could have gotten all of his answers. And I really respect the hell out of Ryan Poles for being able to go out there and have an open discussion about that and say, you know what, this is everything. I recommend everyone going watching it. It's only 3 minutes, and you can see that he's upset and frustrated about it, like, and he doesn't want to do this, but he knows this is the right thing to do. And so I got a lot of respect for Poles for that, for being able to step up and do that for sure.
Yeah. And
And
I
that
hope you get the deal done, man. I hope you
I do
guys get the
too.
deal done.
eh, you will see a very, very happy orangutan, like a
Yeah.
hairless orangutan, be here next Saturday if they get that deal done. Again, my opening mood next week will either be with joy or a bottle of liquor in my hand, just going like, okay, here we go, we're talking sports. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see the state I am next week when the deal gets done. But for today, obviously, I'm going to be doing live play-by-play for the Chicago Bears and Kansas City Chiefs here on this channel. Hopefully, people can come by, watch it, and enjoy what we have. But yeah, that is all we really have time for. Obviously, with Saturday stuff with preseason, there's going to be games on. We had to jump on a little bit earlier than we were both expecting. So if we both seem a little bit more tired and out of it, it's because the caffeine hasn't fully kicked into us yet. And we'd like to thank everyone for watching, and we will see you guys all next time.
Peace.